Hey guys, and welcome to another video. This week we're talking about histograms and the light meter on your camera. We're talking about what is a histogram, what it's used for, when it's useful, when it's not useful, and also the light meter on your camera, because you don't really need, if you're run and gunning, you're on the fly, you don't really need an external light meter. You can use your camera to help you get that perfect exposure. If you haven't seen my first video in this series, it explains how to get out of auto mode and into your manual settings on your camera. So if you haven't watched that, please head on over there, give that a quick watch, because that's got a lot of information that I'm not going to cover in this video. For reasons of time, it's going to be too long to explain. So once you're in manual mode and you're looking to get that perfect exposure, that good picture, that well balanced picture out of your camera, you want to use the histogram, or you may want to use the histogram and or the light meter on your camera if your camera has those functions. So most DSLR and mirrorless cameras nowadays do have the ability to show you your histogram for an image. What is the histogram? The histogram is a little graph. You'll find it when you're taking a picture on your camera. You'll find it post-processing in apps like Lightroom or Photoshop. It will show you how much of your image has dark areas and how much of your image has light areas. That's the simplest way I can explain it. So that is all you need to know about your histogram. You don't need to know anything else. That is the most simplest and easiest way to think about your histogram. So let's contemplate the myth that there is a perfect histogram. I watch YouTube channels and videos constantly. I'm always looking to update my own stuff, so the best place to look for reference is on YouTube, and I'm always hearing that the myth of a perfect histogram, that you've got to get the histogram perfectly within the graph. Life isn't that simple, and if you do have a perfect histogram like this, your image is going to be flat because there's going to be no contrast in it. If your image has a lot of dark areas, or more dark areas than light, you're going to find your graph over to the left, and if your image has more light areas or more whites in it, your graph is going to be nearer to the right. Let's think about this in terms of your composition. To get a perfect histogram, your composition has to be so flat and have really low contrast in it to get that perfect shape in your histogram, because it means that you haven't got all those darks, all those lights. It's all the midtones that are coming out. So let's say, for instance, you're shooting a black cat on a black background. How are you going to use your histogram and get that perfect histogram when you're shooting an all black cat? Because there's going to be very little whites in the image. You're going to expect your histogram to be all over to the left hand side because that's your composition. Same if you're in the Arctic and you're shooting a polar bear. Everything's white or everything's light. There's no dark areas in the image apart from maybe the polar bear's nose. So you're going to expect your histogram to be all over to the right. You can use your histogram to a point, but you need to get past that and start understanding that when you shoot a composition, you need to know what to expect from your histogram, not the other way around. To get better, you need to point your camera at a composition and study that composition yourself and understand where you should be seeing your histogram. If you're shooting something that has a lot of contrast, say you're doing a landscape and the ground is much darker than the sky, which is the usual case, you're going to expect to get quite a bit on your graph on both ends of the histogram, and you should be expecting that. Now there are ways to compensate that, and in other videos we'll go over filters you can use to compensate for a light sky, for instance, using graduated filters and stuff like that. Or you can bracket your exposures take 3 or 4 or 5 exposures of the same composition and blend them in Photoshop, which will be covered in another video. That'll be one coming up soon. My advice to you is don't worry too much about the histogram. When I'm shooting weddings and you're run and gunning, you're not going to be worried about your histogram. You're going to take a picture, you're going to look at the back of your camera and look on the screen, see what it looks like. If it looks good, okay. If it's a little bit out, you're not going to notice that on your camera, but you're going to pull that back in Photoshop or in Lightroom later on. It's not a big deal. And don't let people, or if you're watching YouTube and you watch some of the channels that I watch, don't let them bug you down with this perfect histogram, because it doesn't exist. It's a fallacy, it's a myth that you're never going to get unless you've got a flat image and it's a rubbish image. My advice is to get out there, point your camera at something, get your composition, and study the composition yourself before you take the picture, and then work out where your histogram should be. Then look on the back of your camera and see if your histogram is the way you thought it would be. If it's not, there's a good chance that your exposure is a little bit off, so you can adjust for that, and my other video will show you how to do that. The other way to understand your exposure from your camera is your light meter. Now this, in some cases, is a lot easier and a lot faster to use if you're running and gunning than your histogram. Essentially it tells you if your exposure, for what the camera thinks, because don't forget the camera will evaluate for the whole of your composition. It will tell you roughly, give or take, where your exposure is at, whether it's perfect or a little bit underexposed, a little bit overexposed. Sometimes again you will need to look at your composition and understand that you need to either be slightly overexposed or slightly underexposed, depending on what's in your composition. But it's generally an easier way to understand your image before you take your shot than if you are messing around looking for your histogram, because this will be probably on your screen on top of your camera. Your histogram, you're going to have to press a few buttons to find that. It's usually the I button on a Canon, or on a Sony, I think. It's the display button on the Sony. So yeah, so your light meter on your camera is going to be an easier and quicker way to understand where your exposure's at. It'll help you to compensate for exposure either by changing your shutter speed, ISO or whatever, and it will move depending on where it thinks you should be at. And sometimes, you've heard me say it in a few of my videos, and especially sometimes in my interior design photography, I sometimes underexpose slightly on purpose, because I find it easier to pull out details from an underexposed image than if I overexpose it or accidentally overexpose it. The detail in the lighter areas of an image are much harder to pull back in Lightroom and Photoshop than they are if you underexpose and try and pull back the detail from the darker areas of your image. Again, we'll talk about that in another video. It's something that crops up all the time. I see it on videos all the time, and I see the misconception of histograms and how people use them when they take pictures. This has been a quick video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please smash that thumbs up down there, give it a like, and share if you can on your social media. And also, if you haven't subscribed, guys, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get a notification every time I upload a video. I'm trying to do at least one video a week, if not a couple, so hopefully you're going to enjoy them and keep this series going, this Photography 101. I'm enjoying giving you my experience, and hopefully you guys are taking something away from that. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible because that's how I learn. Simple. I'm not technically minded with this, I'm self-taught, so I'm passing on that knowledge as best I can, and hope you enjoy it. So I will see you again in another video. Hopefully it'll be within a week or so, and please comment down below if you've got any comments. See you soon. Bye.